The night was quiet, too quiet for what would follow. The hum of tires against wet asphalt filled the air as Lieutenant Marcus Reed steered his car through the dimly lit streets of Brookford, a mid-sized American city that liked to think of itself as safe. His uniform was still crisp from a long day at the base, press jacket, ribbons shining faintly in the dashboard glow. He was tired but peaceful, just a soldier heading home. The red and blue lights came out of nowhere. Marcus's stomach dropped. He signaled and pulled over immediately, his training instinctive, his composure automatic. Every black man he knew had been taught the same rulebook: keep your hands visible, speak calmly, don't make sudden moves. But Marcus had another layer. He wore the nation's uniform. Surely that meant something. The officer approached fast, flashlight beams slicing through the rain. License and registration. The tone wasn't curious. It was sharp, accusing. Marcus spoke evenly. Yes, sir. My wallet's in my pocket. Registration's in the glove box. The beam didn't move from his face. Slowly, the officer ordered. Marcus did exactly that. No hesitation, no argument. But he could feel the tension curling in the air. It wasn't just procedure. It was presumption. When he handed over the documents, the officer's lip curled. You military? Yes, sir. Lieutenant Marcus Reed, U.S. Army. The officer muttered. And what's a guy like you doing in a car like this? Marcus blinked, unsure how to answer. It wasn't really a question. It was an insult, wrapped in authority. Sir, I just came from base. Is there a problem? Step out of the vehicle. The words hit like a command, meant to humiliate, not protect. Marcus hesitated for half a second, confused. Is there a reason, officer? I said step out of the vehicle. He obeyed. Hands up, slow movements, doors creaking open. Rain dotted his shoulders as he stepped onto the pavement, boots polished to regulation shine. He stood tall, calm, and respectful. But calm wasn't enough. Without warning, the officer's hand went to his belt, a sharp hiss. The world exploded in pain. Pepper spray scorched Marcus's eyes, blinding him instantly. He staggered backward, coughing, choking on the chemical burn. Why are you doing this? He gasped.
Stop resisting, the officer shouted. But Marcus wasn't resisting. He couldn't even see. Bystanders in nearby cars began rolling down their windows. Phones came out. One woman's voice trembled as she shouted, "He's in uniform! He didn't do anything!" The officer ignored her, forcing Marcus down onto the hood of the patrol car. A second cruiser arrived. Another officer stepped out, confusion written across his face. What's going on here? He was resisting, the first one barked. No, he wasn't, someone yelled from the sidewalk. We've got it on video. Through the haze of pain, Marcus heard those words, on video. And somehow, amid the humiliation and agony, that gave him hope. This moment wouldn't vanish in silence. When a supervising sergeant arrived, everything changed. The bystanders were yelling now, the camera lights bright against the rain. Within minutes, Marcus was released, his wrists red from the cuffs, his uniform soaked and crumpled. The officer who had sprayed him avoided his eyes. Marcus didn't say much. He just stood there, breathing hard, dignity barely intact. A woman approached with a bottle of water. We saw everything, she said softly. My name's Bianca. I recorded the whole thing. He nodded, voice rough. Thank you. She looked at him like someone seeing a crack in the world they thought they understood. By dawn, the video had spread across social media like wildfire. The headline read, Army officer pepper sprayed in a traffic stop. The footage was brutal, undeniable. Marcus standing motionless, hands visible, uniform gleaming, then suddenly collapsing under the spray. The outrage was immediate. Hashtags flooded the timeline. Hashtag Justice for Marcus Reed. Hashtag Accountability Now. Hashtag Enough is Enough. Veterans posted their own photos in uniform, writing, "This could have been me." But the noise cut both ways. Critics surfaced too. Anonymous accounts saying he must have done something wrong, that officers don't act for no reason. Marcus scrolled through the chaos silently, his phone buzzing nonstop. The Army called. His commanding officer sounded careful, like he was balancing empathy with public relations. Lieutenant Reed, we saw the footage. We'll be monitoring the investigation. Are you holding up? Marcus stared at the wall. I'm fine, sir. But he wasn't.
For every kind message, there were 10 questioning his humanity. For every show of support, another thread dissecting his actions frame by frame. Still, he stayed quiet. Then Bianca reached out again. Reporters keep calling me, she said. I'm ready to tell them what I saw. She became his unexpected ally, a school teacher turned accidental activist. Together, they met with civil rights attorney Rebecca Lawson, a sharp-eyed woman who'd taken on impossible cases before. Rebecca studied the footage in silence, jaw tight. She'll call this an isolated incident, she finally said. It isn't. This department has history. Within days, she unearthed it. Complaints against the same officer, use of force reports buried, internal memos glossing over misconduct. Patterns. Always patterns. Marcus listened, anger simmering beneath his calm. How does someone like that keep his badge? Rebecca looked up from the file. Because the system protects itself. As the investigation unfolded, the city tried damage control. The police chief released a statement. We are reviewing the incident. But the public wasn't buying it. Protests erupted outside headquarters. Crowds carried signs, justice for Marcus Reed, end qualified immunity, serve and protect, not assault. The mayor called for transparency. The department called for patience. The streets called for change. Marcus, meanwhile, found himself thrust into a role he never asked for. Every interview request, every headline, every camera pointed at his face. It all made him ache for anonymity. But then letters started arriving. A veteran in Chicago wrote, "You reminded me why I joined." A mother from Texas said, "My son wears that uniform too. We're praying for you." And one letter, written in a child's uneven handwriting, simply read, "Dear Mr. Reed, my dad says you're brave. I want to be brave like you." That one broke him. Rebecca filed the lawsuit, a federal civil rights case citing not just Marcus's assault, but decades of departmental neglect. Reporters camped outside the courthouse. Late-night shows debated the Reed case. The officer who pepper-sprayed him went on television, insisting he'd feared for his safety. But the video spoke louder. When the case reached trial, the nation watched. Marcus sat at the plaintiff's table beside Rebecca, his uniform pressed once again. The courtroom's silent, except for camera shutters clicking softly. The city's lawyer tried to paint it as a misunderstanding. Split-second decisions, she said. Officers have to act fast to protect themselves. Rebecca rose slowly, eyes fierce. Protect themselves from what? She asked. A man sitting still in a uniform representing the very country that employs them? Bianca took the stand next. He didn't resist, she said firmly. He just stood there. Then the officer sprayed him. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The defense tried to poke holes. Are you sure you saw everything clearly? Bianca leaned forward. I saw enough to know what wrong looks like. Then came Marcus's turn. He stood, buttoned his jacket, and faced the jury. His voice was calm, steady, stronger than he felt inside. That night, I was driving home from duty. I followed every command. I kept my hands visible. I said yes, sir, to every order. But none of that mattered, because before that officer saw a soldier, he saw a black man. A silence so deep it felt sacred filled the courtroom.
I wear this uniform because I believe in the idea of America. But belief isn't blind. It means fighting for the country we could be, not the one that still allows this to happen. Even the jurors avoided blinking. Rebecca presented one final piece of evidence, an internal email chain showing senior officers strategizing how to control the narrative. One message read, "Discredit Reed, check for prior incidents." Gasps rippled through the room. When the verdict came, it wasn't just a legal win. It was a cultural one. The jury found the city and officer liable. Damages were awarded, an official apology followed. But the real victory was the policy overhaul that came next. Mandatory bias training, civilian oversight committees, and the firing of multiple superiors who'd buried prior complaints. The headlines changed tone. Lieutenant Reed case sparks nationwide reform. But Marcus didn't celebrate. Not publicly. For him, it wasn't about vindication. It was about what came after. He accepted speaking invitations reluctantly at first, then passionately. Universities, military bases, community centers all wanted to hear him. Months later, he stood behind a podium at Howard University, facing an auditorium packed with students, veterans, and activists. Cameras rolled, but this time they weren't there for scandal. They were there for change. "I didn't ask for this," Marcus began, voice echoing through the hall. "That night could have broken me, but it didn't. It showed me that silence protects no one." He paused, scanning the crowd. "We talk about justice like it's a system, but justice is people. People brave enough to hold power accountable. People like Bianca who hit record when it mattered. People like you who refuse to look away." Applause thundered through the room. "This isn't just my story. It's our story. Because injustice doesn't need darkness. It needs silence. And when we speak, when we demand better, we light up the world." That night, as Marcus sat alone in his apartment, the city skyline glowing outside his window, he scrolled through hundreds of messages from strangers. One caught his eye. "You gave me hope for my son's future. Thank you for standing up." He smiled faintly, exhaling the breath he'd been holding for months. Maybe this was why it all happened. To remind people that courage isn't loud. Sometimes it's just refusing to stay quiet. Across Brookford, changes rippled outward. Lieutenant Marcus Reed's lineup became part of Howard University's criminal justice curriculum. Community leaders collaborated. It wasn't perfect. It never is. But it was progress. And progress, Marcus thought, was worth every scar. The story of Lieutenant Marcus Reed isn't just about one man. It's about the millions who live in the tension between duty and dignity, who love a country that doesn't always love them back, yet keep fighting to make it better. Justice doesn't happen overnight. It happens because ordinary people decide enough is enough. It happens when someone presses record, when someone says, "I saw what you did," when someone like Marcus stands tall even while on his knees. It happens when truth refuses to stay silent. Because sometimes it takes one man's humiliation to spark a nation's awakening.
If this story moved you, don't let it fade away. Hit that like button right now to help others discover the story of Lieutenant Marcus Reed. Subscribe to True Crime Files TV for more true-life-inspired narratives that expose injustice, celebrate courage, and demand change. We tell the stories that matter. Stories that challenge systems, heal hearts, and remind the world that truth is worth following. Turn on notifications so you never miss a voice that needs to be heard. Because together, we don't just tell stories,
we start conversations that change lives.